The sun hung low over Asheville, casting a warm golden glow that seemed to wrap around the family home like a familiar embrace. My sister had organized the reunion, and I arrived early, hoping to help with preparations. The scent of freshly baked cornbread wafted through the air, mingling with the earthy aroma of summer blooms. Laughter echoed from the backyard as children chased one another, their joy infectious. I hadn't seen my nephew, Ethan, in years. He had grown from a boy into a young man during that time. The last time we were together, he was still navigating his teenage years. Now he stood tall with an easy smile that seemed to light up the room. I felt a twist in my stomach when our eyes met across the living room. There was something different about him, a confidence that drew me in. As relatives began to gather, I busied myself in the kitchen, chopping vegetables and stirring sauces while stealing glances at Ethan. He moved easily among our family, engaging everyone with charm and wit. I couldn't shake the feeling that there was an unspoken connection between us, something that simmered beneath the surface of casual conversation. "Hey Aunt Claire," he said as he stepped into the kitchen, his voice warm and inviting. "Need any help?" "Just chopping these veggies," I replied, trying to keep my tone light and casual. He leaned against the counter beside me, his presence overwhelming yet comforting. We exchanged small talk about life since I last saw him, his college experiences and aspirations for the future, but each word felt heavy with an undercurrent that neither of us acknowledged. As more family members arrived, I found myself drawn back into the chaos of reunion festivities. The laughter grew louder as drinks flowed freely, a little too freely for some. I watched as Ethan mingled with cousins and uncles. It was hard not to admire how effortlessly he navigated our family dynamics. Later in the evening, after dinner had been served and stories shared around a flickering fire pit outside, I noticed Ethan standing alone on the porch. The night air was cool against my skin as I stepped outside to join him. "Beautiful night," he said softly, gazing up at the stars. "It really is," I replied, leaning against the railing beside him. The moment stretched between us like a taut string ready to snap. We stood in silence for what felt like an eternity until he finally turned to me, his expression serious yet curious. "You've always been one of my favorite people." A rush of warmth flooded through me at his words. "You've grown up so much," I said before quickly adding, "I'm proud of you." His gaze held mine longer than necessary before he looked away toward the yard where laughter echoed again. Something shifted in that moment, a tension crackled between us like static electricity. The reunion continued late into the evening, laughter blended seamlessly with music drifting from a nearby speaker. As night deepened and drinks continued flowing among family members, barriers began to lower around us all. I found myself alone with Ethan again later on. We had retreated inside to escape some rowdy cousins playing games outside. The atmosphere was quieter here but still filled with warmth from memories shared throughout our lives together. "You know," he said casually as we settled on opposite ends of a couch in the dimly lit living room, "I've always thought you were amazing." My heart raced at his words. They lingered between us like an uninvited guest at a gathering meant for celebration. "I appreciate that," I managed to say while struggling against an internal conflict brewing within me, the weight of familial expectations pressing down hard on my conscience. Just then, an old family secret resurfaced, a whispered conversation caught just outside my earshot between two relatives discussing long-buried grievances from years past regarding love lost and choices made by those who came before us. It added pressure to an already tense evening filled with unsaid words hanging heavily over our heads. The night wore on as conversations ebbed and flowed around us. Each laugh felt tinged with something deeper than mere enjoyment, something unacknowledged but palpable nonetheless. Ethan leaned closer as if drawn by some invisible force pulling him toward me across space filled only by memories shared throughout our lives together. Moments now colored by this strange mix of nostalgia tinged with something else entirely new yet frighteningly familiar, desire. "I should get back out there," he finally said after what felt like hours spent lingering within this intimate bubble we'd created without realizing it existed until now. Until it nearly burst under pressure from everything left unsaid between us both, waiting just below surface tension, threatening release at any moment should one wrong move be made by either party involved here tonight. But before he could stand up fully from his seat beside me, before either of us could break free from this moment, I caught sight once more out through window nearby where laughter erupted again amongst other family members gathered outside enjoying themselves without knowing how precarious things had become inside here, how fragile everything felt suddenly, how easily all could change if we weren't careful enough moving forward into whatever lay ahead beyond tonight's festivities, filled only moments ago by warmth shared among those closest around us, all gathered together once more beneath stars shining brightly overhead, illuminating paths yet unexplored, waiting patiently just beyond reach, beckoning forth toward unknown futures awaiting discovery. Together? The laughter outside continued to echo through the open window, a stark contrast to the silence that enveloped us. My heart raced as I sat there, acutely aware of the warmth radiating from his body next to mine. The wine had lowered my defenses, and I could feel the weight of unspoken words pressing down on both of us. "Maybe we should go back out there," he suggested, his voice barely above a whisper. The hint of vulnerability in his tone made my chest tighten. "Yeah, maybe," I replied, though my mind was racing with thoughts about what had just transpired between us. This wasn't just a fleeting moment, it felt like a crack in the foundation of everything I held dear. As we lingered in that charged space, I watched him fidget with the hem of his shirt. The innocence of our surroundings felt like a cruel joke against the backdrop of our hidden emotions. The clinking of glasses and cheerful chatter filtered through the walls, reminding me of how easily we could be swept away by familial ties and obligations. "Do you think anyone suspects anything?" he asked suddenly, breaking my reverie. I shook my head slowly. No one would even imagine, but as I said it, doubt crept in. What if they did? What if someone caught on to this strange tension that had blossomed between us? He leaned closer, and I could smell the faint scent of his cologne mingling with the remnants of dinner wafting through from the kitchen. "I don't want to ruin anything," he murmured. "Neither do I," I replied, but even as those words left my lips, they felt hollow. The kiss we shared moments ago lingered in my mind, a reckless decision fueled by wine and an undeniable connection. The door creaked open slightly, and panic surged through me as I turned toward it. My sister's voice floated into the room as she called out for us to join everyone outside for a toast. "You two are missing all the fun. Come on." We exchanged quick glances filled with unspoken understanding before he stood up abruptly. "Let's go." I followed him outside where laughter erupted again as glasses were raised high under twinkling fairy lights strung across the yard. The atmosphere was festive. Families were gathered together sharing stories and memories while children ran about playing tag beneath the warm summer sky. But amidst this joyous scene, an unsettling feeling settled deep within me like a stone in my stomach. How could we return to normalcy after what had just happened? I took a deep breath and forced myself to focus on conversations around me, my brother recounting an embarrassing childhood story about me that made everyone laugh uproariously while I feigned annoyance at him for bringing it up yet again. Yet all I could think about was how close he had been only moments ago, how easily our lives could intertwine beyond familial bonds if we allowed ourselves to slip further into this forbidden territory. Later that evening, after drinks flowed freely and laughter echoed into the night, I found myself wandering away from the crowd toward a quieter corner of the yard where shadows danced beneath trees swaying gently in the breeze. He followed me without saying a word. There was something comforting about being alone together again amidst all this chaos surrounding us. "I didn't mean for things to get so complicated," he said softly as he stepped beside me under an old oak tree whose branches hung low overhead like protective arms shielding us from prying eyes. "Neither did I admitted quietly, glancing up at him through lashes that felt heavier than usual after too much wine. In this secluded space away from prying eyes and judgmental whispers that would surely come if anyone else saw us here together now, closer than ever before, I felt an urge rising inside me again despite knowing how wrong it was, how taboo, how dangerous for both our families if anyone discovered what lay beneath our surface interactions. As if drawn by some magnetic force pulling us closer together despite everything holding us back, the weight of family expectations pressing down on our shoulders, I found myself leaning into him once more until our lips met again in another moment filled with vulnerability wrapped tightly around desire lingering just beneath layers upon layers built over years spent apart yet so close at heart. But then suddenly footsteps approached from behind, the unmistakable sound cutting through our fragile bubble like glass shattering against stone. And before either one of us could react or pull away fast enough to hide what had transpired between us just moments earlier, a familiar face emerged into view, my sister standing wide-eyed at what she'd stumbled upon unexpectedly. "What are you two doing?" she asked incredulously while crossing her arms over her chest defensively as though trying to shield herself from whatever revelation might unfold next before her very eyes. Caught off guard completely by her sudden appearance, both startled yet unable to fully mask expressions painted across our faces, I felt heat rise within me not only from embarrassment but also fear creeping up at how easily everything might unravel now that someone else knew. Now that someone else bore witness to this hidden current flowing silently beneath surface tension threatening release at any moment should one wrong move be made by either party involved here tonight. The air felt charged with tension as I stood there, caught in the web of my own choices. My heart raced, not just from the surprise of being discovered, but from the weight of what it all meant. The laughter and chatter of the family celebration faded into a distant hum, overshadowed by the reality of my actions. My niece's eyes darted between us, searching for answers that neither of us could provide. "What are you two doing?" she asked incredulously while crossing her arms over her chest defensively. I glanced at my nephew, who stood beside me, his expression a mix of confusion and concern. The lightheartedness of the gathering felt like a distant memory. In that moment, I wanted nothing more than to retreat into the shadows and hide from this unfolding drama. Yet here we were, exposed and vulnerable. "We were just talking," I managed to say, my voice barely above a whisper. It sounded weak even to my own ears. "Just talking," she echoed, skepticism dripping from her tone. "You looked like you were sharing a secret." A secret indeed, one that had grown more complex with each passing day since that kiss we shared in a moment of weakness. I felt an urge to explain everything, to lay bare the tangled emotions that had led us here. But how could I? The very idea seemed ludicrous in light of our familial ties. "I think you should leave them alone," my nephew finally spoke up, trying to diffuse the situation as he shifted uncomfortably on his feet. My niece's gaze softened slightly at his words but remained wary. "You both have some explaining to do." She turned on her heel and walked away, leaving us in a silence thick with unspoken words. As she disappeared into the crowd, I felt an overwhelming sense of dread wash over me. What if this was only the beginning? The family reunion was supposed to be about reconnecting with loved ones, sharing memories and laughter, not unraveling secrets that could tear us apart. "I didn't expect her to find us," I said quietly, looking at my nephew. He ran a hand through his hair in frustration. "Neither did I," he replied, his voice low and tense. "What do we do now?" I wished I had an answer, something reassuring to offer him, but all I could muster was uncertainty. The thrill of our connection had been intoxicating. Now it felt like a heavy burden threatening to crush me under its weight. "We have to be careful," I finally said, trying to regain some semblance of control over this spiraling situation. "We can't let anyone else know." He nodded slowly but didn't meet my gaze. Instead, he stared off into the distance as if searching for clarity among the chaos surrounding us. The evening wore on without incident after that awkward confrontation. However, every laugh and cheer from family members felt tainted by our secret. Conversations flowed around us like wine at dinner tables, rich and vibrant yet ultimately superficial against the backdrop of our hidden turmoil. Later that night, as we stood on the porch overlooking the twinkling lights of Asheville below us, I felt an overwhelming urge to bridge the emotional chasm that had formed between us since our niece's interruption. "Can we talk about what happened?" I asked hesitantly. He turned toward me then, a flicker of vulnerability in his eyes, and nodded silently. "I don't want this to ruin everything," I continued softly. "But it feels impossible not to think about us." Our lips met unexpectedly at that quiet moment, an impulsive act driven by desire but also desperation for connection amid uncertainty. It lasted only seconds before reality crashed back, and like a wave pulling away from shore, we broke apart abruptly as if burned by fire rather than ignited by passion. "What are we doing?" he whispered hoarsely, as though grappling with his own internal conflict mirrored within me too deeply for either one of us to articulate fully yet. "I don't know," came my honest reply, tinged with sorrowful acceptance, an acknowledgement that whatever had sparked between us was now entwined with guilt and fear for our family's well-being. Before either one could speak again or delve deeper into this conversation fraught with implications beyond comprehension right now, a sudden commotion erupted from inside the house, drawing our attention away from each other momentarily. Curiosity piqued despite everything else happening around me. Instinctively drawn towards whatever drama awaited behind closed doors, I stepped forward only for him to grasp my arm gently yet firmly before speaking up once more. "Let's not get caught up in any more trouble tonight." His words hung heavy between us like fog settling over familiar ground, caution mixed with longing creating tension thick enough you could almost taste it lingering on your tongue long after parting ways again moments later. As whispers filtered through open windows carrying snippets about family feuds bubbling beneath surface-level joy, it became clear this reunion held more than just laughter. Old grudges resurfaced alongside new alliances forming out of necessity rather than affection alone. I overheard snippets exchanged between relatives, with raised voices discussing personal grievances long buried beneath layers upon layers built over years spent together. Each argument echoing louder than any joyous recollections shared earlier tonight among relatives gathered here under one roof seeking solace amidst chaos swirling outside their control entirely. The weight pressed down on me heavier than before, knowing how fragile everything truly was. One revelation could unravel years' worth of bonds forged through shared history if even just one person dared speak openly about what lingered beneath surface-level smiles plastered across faces, pretending normalcy still existed within these walls tonight. With every passing hour spent surrounded by family members oblivious toward turmoil brewing just beneath their feet, I couldn't shake feeling trapped within confines created by choices made long ago, leading me down paths never intended nor anticipated until now, when consequences began revealing themselves clearer than ever before. The night stretched on, heavy with unspoken words and the weight of our choices. We spent the night together, wrapped in a cocoon of shared secrets and uncertainty. The dim light filtering through the curtains cast shadows that danced across the walls, mirroring the turmoil within me. Each moment felt like a fragile thread, ready to snap at any misstep. As dawn broke, I lay awake, contemplating what had transpired. The soft sounds of my nephew's breathing beside me were both comforting and alarming. I had crossed a line that I never thought I would approach, and now I was left to grapple with the implications of my actions. There was something intoxicating about our connection, yet it was laced with an undeniable fear of betrayal toward family. The phone rang suddenly, slicing through the morning quiet. The shrill sound pulled me from my thoughts, and I reached for it with a sense of dread. It was my sister, her voice tinged with urgency. "We need to talk," she said without preamble. "It's about the family reunion next month." I could hear the underlying tension in her tone, a warning bell ringing loudly in my mind. "What's wrong?" I asked cautiously. "There's been some talk," she continued hesitantly. "People are noticing things, strange interactions." My heart raced as she spoke, Memories of stolen glances and whispered conversations flashed before me like a slideshow of guilt. Talk? What kind of talk? My voice was barely above a whisper. Just things that don't add up, she replied cryptically. You need to be careful. As we hung up, anxiety settled in my stomach like a stone. The implications of her words sank deep. If our secret were to come out, it could shatter not just our relationship but the entire family structure we had built over years. I glanced over at him still asleep beside me, his face peaceful yet unaware of the storm brewing outside these four walls. The day dragged on as I tried to maintain an air of normalcy around family members who remained blissfully ignorant of the turmoil beneath the surface. We gathered for brunch at a local cafe known for its vibrant atmosphere and eclectic menu, a favorite spot for family gatherings over the years. The laughter and chatter around me felt like an echo from another world as I struggled to keep my composure intact. Every smile exchanged felt like an act, each laugh forced as I navigated through conversations laden with family gossip and updates on lives that seemed so uncomplicated compared to mine now, a life tangled in secrets and desires that defied reason. Are you okay? My sister leaned closer during a lull in conversation, her eyes searching mine for answers. Just tired, I replied quickly, avoiding her gaze. She didn't press further but exchanged a knowing look with another relative nearby, one that told me they sensed something amiss. As we finished our meals and prepared to leave, my nephew approached me under the guise of asking about my plans for the upcoming reunion. His smile was warm yet tinged with uncertainty. He too felt the weight lingering between us as if it were an invisible thread binding us together against all odds. I'll see you there, he asked softly, his eyes searching mine for reassurance or perhaps something more profound. Yes, I managed to say without faltering too much, even saying that felt like stepping into treacherous waters where one misstep could lead to disaster. After parting ways with family members at their cars parked along the street lined with blooming dogwoods, I found myself alone for a moment, a rare chance to breathe amidst chaos swirling around me constantly since that fateful night we spent together. But solitude brought no clarity. Instead, it amplified doubts gnawing at me from within. What if this connection was truly meant to remain hidden? How could something so beautiful feel so wrong? I decided to take a walk along one of Asheville's scenic trails nearby. The fresh air might help clear my head or at least provide some semblance of peace amid uncertainty swirling through every aspect of life, now intertwined with guilt-ridden thoughts about what lay ahead given looming familial expectations hanging heavily overhead like storm clouds threatening rain any moment now. As nature enveloped me in its embrace, the scent of pine mingling with earth after recent rains, I couldn't escape memories flooding back. Laughter shared over meals filled with love among relatives gathered close together celebrating milestones achieved throughout years gone by. Yet here stood this new reality threatening everything once cherished dearly. Not just regarding familial bonds but also personal integrity tested beyond limits previously thought imaginable until now when consequences began revealing themselves clearer than ever before. I returned home feeling more conflicted than when I'd left. Each step echoed doubts louder than ever while simultaneously igniting sparks within regarding choices made only days prior leading down paths never intended nor anticipated until now when consequences began revealing themselves clearer than ever before. Days turned into weeks leading up toward reunion day. Each passing moment weighed down by apprehension building steadily alongside anticipation mixed together creating an uneasy cocktail simmering beneath surface-level interactions among relatives seemingly oblivious toward turmoil brewing just beneath their feet. Finally arrived reunion day dawned bright yet heavy filled once more laughter mingled among familiar faces gathered under sunlit skies where memories awaited creation anew despite shadows lurking just out of sight waiting patiently poised ready strike when least expected. As families mingled amidst festivities celebrating life itself while sharing stories spanning generations past, my heart raced knowing what lingered beneath surface-level smiles plastered across faces pretending normalcy still existed within these walls tonight. Then came whispers drifting through air carried by gentle breeze rustling leaves overhead. Words exchanged among relatives hinting at suspicions growing stronger each passing hour, culminating toward inevitable confrontation looming closer just beyond horizon, waiting patiently poised, ready strike when least expected. And then it happened. An accidental encounter exposed our connection to others. The moment stretched on forever as eyes widened in disbelief while silence enveloped surroundings thick enough cut through tension hanging heavily overhead, threatening unravel everything once cherished dearly. The family gathering had shifted into a tense atmosphere, thick with unspoken words and lingering glances. Each time I entered a room, I could sense the weight of scrutiny on my shoulders. Conversations halted, laughter faded, and eyes darted away as if they were trying to shield themselves from the reality that had begun to unfold. The guilt gnawed at me, a constant reminder of the secrets I carried. I found myself retreating to the kitchen more often than not, seeking solace in the familiar scents of roasted vegetables and baked goods. Cooking had always been my escape, a way to channel my emotions into something tangible. But even as I chopped onions and stirred pots, my mind wandered back to him, my nephew, the one who had ignited feelings I thought were buried deep within me. "Are you okay?" My sister's voice cut through my thoughts. She leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, her brow furrowed with concern. "Just busy," I replied, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach my eyes. "Busy avoiding everyone," she pressed gently. I shrugged, not wanting to delve into the complexities of my heart. "Just needed some air." As I turned back to the stove, I couldn't shake off her gaze. She was perceptive. After all these years, she knew me too well. The last thing I wanted was for her to suspect anything amiss between me and her son. In moments of solitude, memories flooded back, our stolen conversations filled with laughter and shared dreams. But those moments now felt tainted by deceit. The kiss we shared haunted me like a ghost. It lingered in the corners of my mind during family dinners and gatherings where laughter echoed around us like an unbreakable chain binding us together yet keeping us apart. The phone rang just as I was about to serve dinner, a sharp sound that shattered my thoughts. It was an unfamiliar number, but something compelled me to answer. "Hello?" My voice came out shaky. "Is this Clara?" The voice on the other end was unfamiliar but urgent. "Yes," I replied cautiously. "There's been an incident with your brother," the voice continued without preamble. "You need to come quickly." Panic surged through me as I dropped the wooden spoon onto the counter. "What happened?" "He's in trouble. His business is facing serious issues." The urgency in his tone sent chills down my spine. I hung up feeling lightheaded. All thoughts of hidden emotions faded into a distant memory as familial duty took precedence over everything else. My brother needed me now more than ever. I rushed out of the kitchen and found my sister still standing at the doorframe. "What's wrong?" she asked sharply as she noticed my pale face. "They said there's been an incident with Mark," I managed to say before grabbing my keys from the counter. Her expression shifted from concern to alarm as she followed me outside. "What do you mean? What happened?" "I don't know yet," I replied tersely, frustration bubbling beneath my surface as we climbed into the car together. The drive was filled with tension. Silence enveloped us like a thick fog while thoughts swirled in my mind like leaves caught in an autumn windstorm. What kind of trouble could Mark be in? My heart raced at possibilities. Financial ruin? Legal trouble? Arriving at his office felt surreal. It loomed before us like a fortress under siege. We hurried inside where chaos reigned, employees whispered frantically while others paced nervously across the floor. Mark sat behind his desk looking worn and defeated, his brow furrowed deeply as he spoke animatedly with two men in suits whose expressions were grave. "Clara. Over here," he beckoned when he spotted me entering through the door. I rushed toward him while glancing nervously at his companions who seemed entirely too serious for comfort. "What's going on?" "We're dealing with some financial discrepancies," he said quickly while rubbing his temples as if trying to ease a headache that wouldn't relent. I thought we could manage it internally, but his voice trailed off as he glanced toward one of the men standing beside him, a tall figure whose presence radiated authority mixed with impatience. "You need legal counsel immediately," one man interjected sharply, cutting off Mark's explanation before it could fully form. "What do you mean?" My voice trembled slightly. Fear crept into every word spoken aloud now that reality hit harder than anticipated. "There are allegations being made against your brother regarding mismanagement of funds," he continued without flinching despite our shocked expressions staring back at him wide-eyed like deer caught in headlights. Mark clenched his fists tightly on his desk while swallowing hard. Shame washed over him visibly as though each word spoken pierced deeper than any knife could ever reach within familial bonds woven tightly throughout our lives together since childhood days spent playing tag under summer skies filled with laughter echoing far beyond time itself. "This isn't happening," I muttered under breath, unable to comprehend how things had spiraled so quickly beyond control, leaving us grappling desperately against unseen forces threatening everything we held dear. The very fabric holding our family together began unraveling right before our eyes. As hours passed filled with discussions surrounding potential outcomes ranging from worst-case scenarios down paths leading toward hope flickering dimly like candlelight barely illuminating darkness closing in around us, I stole glances toward Mark, who remained lost within shadows cast by uncertainty looming overhead, threatening swallow whole whatever remained intact among us. Finally breaking away from those heavy conversations for just a moment, I stepped outside seeking fresh air, needing clarity amidst chaos swirling inside, each heartbeat racing wildly against time ticking down relentlessly, reminding me how fragile life truly is. But just then, a familiar figure emerged, walking briskly through parking lot toward me, casting aside worries momentarily replaced by another wave crashing upon shores previously guarded fiercely against temptation arising anew. My nephew stood there looking uncertain yet resolute, a mixture of emotions swirling within those expressive eyes reflecting vulnerability hidden beneath layers built over years spent navigating complexities surrounding family ties binding us together yet tearing apart simultaneously. "What are you doing here?" His voice broke through silence wrapping around us both, creating cocoon shielding against everything else threatening intrude upon this moment shared between two souls intertwined despite circumstances pulling them apart. "I came because," words escaped me momentarily, caught off guard by intensity radiating between us, drawing closer despite knowing consequences looming dangerously nearby, waiting patiently poised ready strike when least expected. But before another word could escape lips, an unexpected shout echoed, breaking tension, shattering fragile connection formed anew just moments prior, sending shockwaves reverberating throughout hearts once united now torn apart once more by reality crashing down around them, leaving nothing but echoes lingering behind. The family gathering felt different this time, the air thick with unspoken words and glances that lingered a moment too long. I stood in the kitchen, pouring myself another glass of wine, hoping the familiar comfort of family would drown out the chaos of my thoughts. The laughter from the living room echoed, but it felt distant, like a world I no longer belonged to. I caught sight of him across the room, my nephew, his smile bright yet shadowed by something deeper. He was talking to my sister, his mother, but his gaze kept drifting toward me. Each glance sent a ripple through my chest, reminding me of what we had shared and what we were now trying to ignore. The distance between us had grown palpable since that night we kissed. It felt as if an invisible barrier had risen up in response to our choices. "Hey," my sister called out, breaking my reverie. "Are you coming? We're about to start the games." "Yeah, just a minute," I replied, forcing a smile as I set down my glass. The games were meant to bring us together, but they only heightened the tension I felt inside. As we gathered in the living room, I sensed a change in dynamics among our family members. Conversations seemed strained, laughter felt forced. It was as if everyone was tiptoeing around an unacknowledged truth that hung heavy in the air. "Let's play charades," someone suggested cheerfully, trying to lift spirits. I watched as my nephew joined in with enthusiasm, his laughter infectious yet bittersweet for me. Memories flooded back, those moments when our connection felt so effortless and pure. But now they were tainted with guilt and confusion. During one round of charades, he was tasked with acting out a movie title while I sat on the sidelines, desperately trying to focus on anything but him. Yet every gesture he made pulled me back into our shared secret, a secret that felt like it was beginning to unravel before my very eyes. When he caught me watching him intently, he froze for just a second before breaking character with a quick smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. That moment was charged. It spoke volumes about what we both understood but dared not articulate. As the game continued around us, I noticed how he seemed more withdrawn than usual, his laughter less frequent and his eyes darting away from mine when they met for even a fleeting second. It unsettled me deeply. Had he truly been avoiding me? The thought stung more than I anticipated. "Are you okay?" I asked him quietly during a break between rounds while others chatted animatedly nearby. He shrugged slightly but didn't meet my gaze fully. "Just tired," he replied too quickly. I wanted to press further, to peel back layers of whatever turmoil lay beneath his surface, but something held me back. Perhaps it was fear or perhaps shame for what we had done and where it had led us both. The evening dragged on like that, filled with half-hearted attempts at fun while an underlying tension simmered just below consciousness. As family members began to leave one by one, I felt an overwhelming sense of dread settle over me like a heavy cloak. "What's going on with you two?" My sister's voice broke through my thoughts as she approached us after saying goodbye to another relative. "Nothing," I replied too quickly again. She raised an eyebrow knowingly before turning her attention back to her son. "You've been quiet tonight." "I'm fine," he said tersely before glancing at me again briefly before looking away once more. My heart raced at the thought that perhaps she sensed something amiss between us, a connection that should never have formed in the first place now threatening everything we held dear as a family. After everyone left, silence enveloped the house like fog rolling in over mountains at dusk, heavy and foreboding. My sister retreated into her room while I lingered in the living room alone with my thoughts and unresolved feelings swirling chaotically within me. I poured myself one last glass of wine and sank into the couch cushions, a familiar refuge turned alien territory filled with memories tainted by regret and longing for something unattainable yet so close within reach just weeks ago. The clock ticked softly in rhythm against this growing unease when suddenly there was a knock at the door, a sound unexpected enough to jolt me upright from where I sat lost in thought. It was him standing there under dim light spilling through doorframe, a silhouette caught between shadows and uncertainty reflected clearly across his features illuminated only by moonlight filtering through nearby trees outside our home's windows. "I need to talk," he said simply without preamble as if rehearsed countless times already within confines of his mind leading up until this very moment when courage finally pushed him forward across thresholds separating us both from whatever lay beyond those walls keeping secrets, hidden away safely until now. "What about?" My voice came out steadier than expected despite racing heart pounding loudly against ribcage echoing urgency threading through every word spoken aloud between us now hanging suspended amidst silence surrounding everything else beyond those walls closing off all distractions leaving only raw honesty laid bare before each other once more. His eyes searched mine searching for answers neither one could articulate without risking everything already fragile enough teetering precariously upon edge waiting patiently ready strike when least expected crashing down upon unsuspecting lives forever altered, irrevocably changed by choices made long ago. "I can't keep pretending anymore." His admission hung heavily between us. A weight neither could bear alone any longer despite knowing consequences looming dangerously nearby waiting patiently poised ready strike whenever least expected shattering fragile connection formed anew just moments prior threatening everything built upon shaky foundation crumbling beneath feet leaving nothing behind but echoes lingering behind. The air was thick with unspoken words, each moment stretching longer than the last. My nephew's gaze bore into me, a mix of longing and fear that mirrored my own turmoil. The weight of our shared history wrapped around us like an invisible tether, binding us to the choices we had made and the consequences looming ahead. "I can't keep pretending anymore," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Those words hung in the air like a storm cloud, heavy with implications. I wanted to respond, to assure him that I felt the same way, but every thought was drowned out by the cacophony of family laughter echoing in the distance. It was a reminder of what we stood to lose. As we stood there, time seemed to blur. The chaos of our families celebrating just outside this moment felt like a world away. I glanced toward the gathering, where relatives exchanged stories and laughter under the warm glow of string lights. The contrast between their joy and our turmoil struck me hard. How could I reconcile this secret with my role as an aunt? "Maybe we should just," I started, but he cut me off. "Just what? Pretend it never happened?" His frustration was palpable. "I can't do that either." He stepped closer, closing the distance between us. My heart raced as I grappled with my emotions, love, guilt, desire, all swirling together in a chaotic dance. It had been 2 years since that fateful family reunion when everything began to shift between us. 2 years filled with moments of stolen glances and whispered conversations that now felt insurmountable. "We need to figure this out," I said finally, finding my voice amid the storm brewing inside me. His eyes softened for a brief moment before reality crashed back in like a tidal wave. "What if they find out?" The thought sent shivers down my spine. Our families were close-knit, secrets had a way of surfacing when least expected. Just then, my sister walked past us, oblivious to our silent struggle but somehow sensing the tension hanging in the air. "Hey! You too! Come join us," she called cheerfully, her laughter ringing out like a bell. I forced a smile and nodded in her direction before turning back to him. "We'll talk later?" He hesitated but nodded slowly as he stepped back into the light of family chatter while I rejoined my sister and cousins at the gathering table filled with food and drink. The evening wore on with an unsettling undercurrent beneath the surface of familial warmth. Conversations flowed easily around me as if nothing had changed, yet everything had shifted irreparably within me. Every laugh felt hollow as I caught glimpses of him across the yard, his smile brightening even in this chaos while my heart sank further into conflict. As night fell and stars blanketed the sky above Asheville, an accidental encounter unraveled some threads that had kept our secret hidden thus far. My brother-in-law approached me casually while holding drinks for everyone. "Have you seen Jake?" he asked lightly but then paused as if weighing his words carefully against something unspoken. "No," I replied too quickly, feeling heat rise in my cheeks at hearing his name again so soon after our confrontation. "He's been acting strange lately," my brother-in-law continued with a knowing look that sent alarm bells ringing through me. "You two are close, is everything okay?" I forced laughter into my voice to mask my rising anxiety. "Of course. Just busy with life." But his gaze lingered too long on mine before he moved away to mingle again with other relatives nearby, a small gesture but one that sent ripples through me nonetheless. Later that night, unable to shake off feelings of dread mixed with exhilaration from our earlier conversation, I found myself wandering away from the festivities toward a quiet corner near the edge of our family home's property where trees loomed tall against moonlight, a sanctuary away from prying eyes. And there he was, Jake, leaning against an old oak tree looking lost in thought until he noticed me approaching and straightened up immediately. "I didn't want anyone else to see us talking," he admitted quietly as if voicing any concern would somehow make it more real than it already was. "Neither do I," I confessed softly, feeling both relief and panic surge within me simultaneously at being together again yet fearing what might come next. "We can't keep doing this," he said firmly, though uncertainty laced his tone, as if questioning whether those words were truly what he wanted or merely what needed saying given circumstances surrounding us both now entangled deeper than ever before since beginning this journey together 2 years ago. I know, I replied reluctantly, aware how fragile everything felt right now, balancing on such thin lines drawn between love for family versus desires threatening all we held dear if exposed too soon or carelessly mismanaged further still. Just then, a loud commotion erupted from inside, the sound of raised voices breaking through our quiet bubble like shards of glass crashing down upon unsuspecting lives forever altered by choices made long ago. "What's happening?" Jake asked instinctively, moving closer toward where noise came from, leaving little room left for hesitation between us anymore. "I don't know," I whispered back uncertainly, glancing over toward house where shadows danced behind windows flickering ominously against backdrop darkness surrounding everything else outside. Then suddenly, my sister burst through door, followed closely by others, all visibly shaken faces, etched worry lines, deepening shadows lurking beneath surface, revealing truths better left unspoken until now. "We need you," she cried breathlessly, looking directly at me while uncertainty flickered across her features, betraying deeper fears lurking just beneath surface, waiting patiently poised, ready strike whenever least expected. Shattering fragile connection formed anew just moments prior, threatening everything built upon shaky foundation, crumbling beneath feet, leaving nothing behind but echoes lingering behind. "What happened?" My voice trembled slightly, unsure whether ready for whatever news awaited us next or not. "It's Mom," she began haltingly before breaking off into silence, the weight of those words heavy enough alone without needing elaboration further still. Panic surged through me, a tidal wave crashing against all rationality, threatening drown out hope entirely, leaving only confusion swirling around, desperately seeking answers amidst chaos unfolding rapidly around us, now forcing decisions upon everyone involved, whether willing or not. Jake looked at me wide-eyed, waiting for direction, yet knowing neither could truly provide any comfort amidst such uncertainty looming overhead, casting dark shadows across paths once clearly defined, blurring lines drawn between loyalty towards family versus desires, threatening unravel everything built over years gone past. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows across the secluded island as I stood at the edge of the water. Waves lapped gently against the shore, a stark contrast to the turmoil swirling within me. Jake had suggested this meeting, a place away from prying eyes, yet it felt like a crucible for our hidden truths. The air was thick with unspoken words as I waited for him to arrive. Memories of our past lingered like ghosts, haunting yet familiar. 2 years had passed since that fateful family reunion, and now we were here, on this island that felt both inviting and suffocating. When Jake finally appeared, his expression mirrored my own, an amalgamation of hope and dread. He approached cautiously, as if every step brought him closer to a precipice from which there was no return. "I didn't know if you'd come," he said softly, his voice barely above a whisper. "I had to," I replied, my heart racing. "We need to talk about everything." He nodded slowly, glancing around as if ensuring no one else could hear us. The weight of our past loomed large between us, every stolen moment and whispered secret echoed in the silence surrounding us. As we settled on the sand, I struggled to find the right words. "Things have changed since we last saw each other," I began tentatively. "Our families, they're not the same." Jake shifted uncomfortably, his gaze fixed on the horizon. "I know. There's been so much tension since that reunion." His voice cracked slightly. "People are starting to notice how different things are." The truth hung heavy in the air. Our connection had not only altered our lives but rippled through our families like an unseen current, threatening to pull everyone under. I thought about my sister's worried glances and how she often sought me out for comfort during family gatherings that felt increasingly strained. "I never wanted this," I confessed, my voice trembling with emotion. "But I can't deny what we shared, what we still share." Jake's eyes met mine with an intensity that made my heart race. "I've tried to forget it all," he admitted, frustration lacing his tone. But every time I see you at family events, it's impossible. A silence fell between us as waves crashed rhythmically against the shore, a sound both soothing and dissonant amidst our turmoil. The quiet offered no solace, instead, it amplified everything left unsaid. "Do you think we can go back?" he asked suddenly, his expression earnest yet pained. Back? The word felt foreign on my tongue. Could any of us truly return to innocence after crossing such boundaries? "I don't know if we can." Just then, distant voices broke through our conversation, a group of family members approaching from a nearby trail leading down to the beach. Panic surged through me again. We hadn't prepared for this intrusion into our fragile moment. "We should go," Jake urged urgently, standing up and scanning for cover among the trees lining the beach. "No. We can't just run away." My heart raced with fear and defiance alike. Hiding felt like admitting defeat when so much was at stake. He hesitated but seemed torn between staying with me and avoiding confrontation with our family members who were now drawing nearer. "What if they see us?" he whispered urgently. "Let them see," I replied fiercely, surprising myself with my own conviction. Before he could respond further, old grievances erupted among relatives who had gathered nearby. Shouting voices filled with anger over past disputes suddenly ignited like dry tinder in a forest fire. "Why don't you ever listen?" one relative shouted at another as tensions flared over trivial matters that seemed inconsequential against what lay beneath their surface, the fractures in family loyalty that mirrored ours. Jake glanced back at me sharply as realization dawned. We were not just confronting our feelings. We were standing at ground zero of an impending storm that threatened to unravel everything around us. "I can't do this here," he said finally, desperation creeping into his voice as he stepped back from me slightly. "What do you mean?" Confusion clouded my judgment. Was he backing away from me or from everything we represented? "There's too much happening," he replied hastily while gesturing towards our relatives who continued bickering loudly nearby without awareness of what was truly brewing beneath their surface tensions. Just then came an unexpected revelation. An aunt stormed down toward us carrying her phone aloft while shouting across others' heads, "You won't believe what I just heard. Someone's been talking behind backs." My stomach dropped as dread pooled within me. Secrets were spilling out into open air like water breaking through a dam, impossible to contain once unleashed upon unsuspecting hearts yearning for stability amid chaos swirling around them all too rapidly now. Jake turned sharply toward me again, his expression shifting from concern into something darker tinged with fear and regret alike, a reflection of everything weighing heavily upon both of us caught up amidst these familial currents threatening destruction. "What if they find out about us?" His voice trembled slightly, now filled with anxiety rather than anger or frustration previously displayed moments before. "I don't know." My own voice faltered under pressure mounting around us, forcing decisions upon everyone involved whether willing or not. Suddenly laughter erupted from another direction, cutting through tension momentarily. A cousin recounting some humorous event leading others into lightheartedness despite seriousness hanging thick over conversations occurring elsewhere. But beneath their laughter lurked uncertainty, the kind that could ignite flames consuming families whole when least expected. As Jake stepped closer again, searching my gaze, desperately seeking answers neither could provide amidst such overwhelming chaos unfolding rapidly around us, now forcing decisions upon everyone involved whether willing or not. A wave crashed violently against rocks nearby, echoing turmoil inside hearts wrestling between desires versus loyalty. What would happen next? What choices would be made when all seemed lost amid rising tides threatening engulfment? In that moment, before anything else transpired, a choice loomed ahead like an approaching storm readying itself for impact.